In the often pretty dark and pessimistic world of Black Mirror, there's one episode that just shines. It's this beautiful, hopeful story called San Junipero. Now, it's a massive fan favorite, and for good reason. But underneath all that sunshine and 80s nostalgia, there's a really deep story about technology, life, death, and what reality even is. So let's get into it. Let's break down what makes this episode just so unbelievably powerful. So we start off in this incredible seaside town. Picture it, glowing neon signs, classic cars, big hair, shoulder pads. It's 1987 and it feels absolutely perfect. Maybe a little too perfect? Welcome to San Junipero. And trust me, what you see is definitely not what you get. At its core, this whole thing kicks off like the perfect 80s romance. I mean, you could basically drop this into any classic teen movie from the era, and it would fit right in. So inside this nightclub called Tucker's, we meet our two main characters. First, you've got Yorkie. She's kind of shy, a little awkward with her big glasses, and you can just tell she is way out of her comfort zone. And then there's Kelly. She's the exact opposite, totally magnetic, confident, the life of the party. They couldn't be more different, but from the second they meet, that spark is just undeniable. And what starts out as just this random meeting in a club, well, it turns into something so much deeper, so fast. With all the arcade games and classic pop hits playing in the background, Yorkie and Kelly just fall for each other, hard. It's this really intense, beautiful connection that feels totally timeless. But here's the thing about that setting. It's not just for looks. The 1987 we're seeing isn't the real 1987. It's like a greatest hits album, a polished, idealized version of the decade. It's nostalgia bottled up and sold, designed to make you feel good, not to be accurate. And honestly, that's our very first major clue that this world isn't quite what it seems. Right when we're getting comfortable in this perfect little romance, the story starts to show us, well, glitches, little things that don't add up. Tiny cracks that start to appear in this perfect, sunny paradise. So Yorkie goes back to San Junipero the next week, but something's off. If you look closely at the movie theater, it's playing Scream. Now, wait a minute. Scream didn't come out until 1996. That's almost a decade later. It's a tiny detail, but it's just wrong. And it's not a one-time thing. The next week, boom, it's suddenly 2002. The fashions change, the music's different, and now the Bourne Identity is on the marquee. The whole world is literally jumping forward through time. So this brings us to the big question, right? What in the world is going on? How is this even possible? Is it some kind of time travel? A dream? The episode really makes you start to question the basic rules of this reality, right along with Yorkie. And the cracks aren't just in the timeline. They're emotional too. During this really intense argument, Kelly just completely loses it and smashes a mirror. That kind of raw violence feels so out of place in this happy little world. It's like the shattered glass is showing us that the characters themselves are just as broken as the reality around them. Something's gotta give. And then, the reveal. About halfway through, the episode does what Black Mirror does best. It pulls back the curtain and completely changes everything you thought you knew. This isn't just a plot twist, it reframes the entire story. So what is San Junipero? Well, it's a simulated reality. Think of it like a virtual retirement home meets a time machine. It's a place where the elderly and the dying can upload their consciousness just for a few hours a week to visit the past, to feel young, and to be free again. Because this is the real Yorkie, an elderly woman who's been a quadriplegic for over 40 years. She was in a car accident right after her family rejected her for coming out as gay. For decades, her entire life has been lived inside a hospital bed, trapped in her own body. And this is the real Kelly. She's also elderly, and she's in hospice, dying of cancer. That vibrant, carefree woman we met in the 80s is, in reality, at the very end of her life. And that right there is the absolute genius of how this episode is structured. By waiting to show us the truth, the show makes us fall in love with who Kelly and Yorkie are, their minds, their personalities, their souls, long before we ever see the broken bodies that have held them captive. Okay, so to make that huge emotional punch land, the filmmakers were super clever. They used specific visual tricks to show the massive difference between the freedom of the simulation and the prison of their real lives. First off, just look at the camera. In San Junipero, it's always moving, gliding, sweeping down these open roads. It feels totally free. But in the real world, the shots are locked down. They don't move at all. They're often really tight on the characters' faces, making you feel just as trapped as they are. And the color? Oh man, the color is everything. The simulation is just exploding with these super saturated neon pinks and blues. It's a total dream. But the real world is drab. It's stripped of all that color, leaving just these sterile, cold whites and grays of a hospital room. It feels completely lifeless. So you see, it all adds up to this really clear visual code. The simulation is all about movement, color, freedom, and youth. Reality is stillness, a lack of color, confinement, and old age. Every shot is telling you the story. Once we know the truth, San Junipero stops being just a fun, nostalgic playground. It becomes something way more important. It's a second chance at a life they never got to live. For Yorkie, who was basically punished her whole life for who she was, and for Kelly, who lived a long, full life but with her own pain, San Junipero is like a digital heaven. It's a safe place where they can finally truly be themselves and love each other openly. It's a chance to heal. But of course, there's one last conflict. Yorkie decides she wants to pass over, to be euthanized and upload her mind to San Junipero forever. But Kelly, she's torn. Her husband died years ago, and he chose not to be uploaded. She promised him she'd do the same. So now she has this impossible choice: honor her past or embrace her future. And in the end, love wins. Kelly chooses Yorkie. She chooses a new life, a new happiness. We get this beautiful, triumphant ending where they're reunited in San Junipero, and they get to literally drive off into the sunset together forever. It's the happy ending that Black Mirror almost never gives us. But because this is Black Mirror, even in that perfect happy moment, the show leaves us with one last, kind of haunting question. As the credits roll, we see the reality behind the simulation: a massive, cold server farm, just rows and rows of blinking lights. And we see these little robotic arms plugging in new consciousnesses like they're USB drives. So is it really heaven, or are they just ghosts in the machine? Echoes of people stored forever in a high-tech graveyard? That is the question the episode leaves you to wrestle with.